it's going to get a nice boost to those defenses that while its hit points are already incredibly high, Blissey doesn't really add much more to it. And with your defensive boost, it's like you're getting roughly 50 base defense when you put max investment with nature on top of the boost from Eviolite. So it does get a lot stronger, and then you're getting a lot more special defense out of it. So really Chansey just becomes a huge threat that sacrifices its item slot to get much more effective stats. And when you just kind of look at Chansey and Blissey overall, huge amount of special defense bulk comes to mind, as well as some decent physical bulk, even though it has almost no defenses to make it more than enough to be able to survive some to most physical hits. Look at its typing, it's a normal typing, which is just excellent. If you want to not take damage, normal is generally the way to go. That you only have a weakness to fighting, which is going to be Chansey's Bane since it is normally physical anyway. On top of that, you just have a lot of craziness with the immunity to Ghost, and then tons of normal moves. Alright, hopping into Pokemon Showdown, we're going to see a lot of ways that people run Chansey. That one of the main ones is Wish, Thunder Wave, Seismic Toss, Heal Bell. Now Chansey is a very, I can't even stress how safe of a Pokemon it is. That if your opponent has special attacks, you're pretty much going to get a free switch in on Chansey, some form of free heal, or some form of free setup. That Chansey can have access to Thunder Wave, Toxic for kind of statusing your opponent, and then also has Seismic Toss. So its low attack stat doesn't really mean anything, because you get off the Seismic Toss, you do roughly a quarter of your opponent's health, depending on how their hit points are, but it's going to be somewhere around a quarter of their health from that, doing the damage equal to the user's level. And then from there you can use Heal Bell to kind of support the rest of your team, or Wish to heal yourself, or heal another Pokemon. That way you do is you bring in Chansey, set up Wish, and then you can switch out, and then you're going to be just set up from there, because the Pokemon coming in is going to gain 50% of Chansey's health. So effectively you can almost full heal some Pokemon, because you have so much hit point bulk, and you're healing for half of that. It's kind of ridiculous what Wish on Chansey can do when you start thinking about it. Also, Heal Bell is just a really good pivot move, and Natural Cure means that Chansey is never going to be status to a point where it can't handle it. Like if it gets burned, paralyzed, put to sleep, or even toxic. Like if it's on a couple turns of Toxic Timer, switch out, Natural Cure, no more poison, unless Chansey's last Pokemon on your team, status is not a thing for you. After that, we also have some other ideas to run Chansey that, you run Toxic, Seismic Toss. Set up Toxic, Seismic Toss, 3 turns later, KO. On top of that, you have Soft Boiled for huge amount of heal, and Minimize to just kind of be a frustrating little annoyance if you can. You come in, set up 2 Minimize, Soft Boiled, and Seismic Toss your way to victory, and then you can Toxic whatever else is in your way. Works actually surprisingly scarily well, which is probably why a lot of people have animosity towards Minimize, mostly because of Chansey. Because I mean, it's already hard enough to KO, even if you're hitting it physically, it can still be a 3-hit KO, and then it becomes almost impossible to hit. Also, let's take a look at the EVs I have set up here. So I was thinking Impish Nature with that defense, and then try to just max out as much as you can get out of it, and try to boost it up, because what you're going to have at that point is something close, actually it's going to be over 200 defense at level 50, which isn't bad with 600 hit points at level 100, over 200 defense at level 100 as well. So it's going to be incredibly tanky than the rest of the special defense. The reason why you don't want to put any EV investment into hit points, even though it seems counterproductive, is that your hit points are so large that, look, it goes from 642 to 704. You're only getting like a 10% boost to your hit points, when with special defense and defense, you're doubling your defense. You're going more than double your defense. You're getting a lot more effective defense out of that. With special defense, you're also still getting a lot more. That's closer to a fifth instead of a tenth on the special defense. So you're going to get more usage out of that as well. Also, we have just a lot of other crazy ways that you can look into Chansey. That what I was thinking, so you can max out the hit points this way, go with the Impish Nature on the defense, and then run Calm Mind. Now, Calm Mind, I'm not even going to use for offense. I'm just going to use it defensively. That with 1 Calm Mind, I'm already higher than special defense. I have all these free extra hit points I invested into, and my defense is still really awesome. Well, not awesome, but it's still really good for my hit points. So I can get the most out of it, Slap, Seismic Toss, Toxic, and Soft Boiled, pretty much like trading off the Minimize or the Heal Bell, in this case, for the extra defensive special defense boost. Even though you're already such a special defense tank, it could be good just to really round out as a tank, become even a physical wall to a degree. And then I was also looking into some other options. This isn't a moveset, this is just like an idea, thinking pool, that Chansey still has the Swing Grace ability. Not many Pokemon have Swing Grace, and it should be respected. That with Blizzard, 20% chance to freeze each opponent that it hits, and you can hit twice in doubles while still being a huge tank. Also, Chansey has Psych Up. Same with Skill Swap. That if you can get Skill Swap onto Chansey, and then you just give Swing Grace to any Pokemon for almost free, and then Psych Up is also just going to be something that if you have a Pokemon that uses defensive boost, now Chansey can have, maybe even an Iron Defense, maybe some kind of special defense with its huge bulk, and it's going to be almost impossible to KO. And it goes without saying, back in the old days of Generation 4, if you wanted to be an insane player, even Generation 5, you used to run the Skarmory combo. I need to pay some respect to Skarmory because it is just devastating. So it's called Skarmory because you run Skarmory Blissey, and the idea is you have a huge physical tank that just ignores everything. And then at the same regard, you have a huge special defense tank that ignores everything. So if you see a physical threat, you bring in Skarmory, Stealth Rock, Spikes, Roost, and if they switch out into a special attacker to handle you, you go into Chansey or Blissey. Like Eviolite Chansey became a thing in 5th generation because of the Eviolite. But you go into Chansey or Blissey to soak up the special hits, and then you set up the Wish for Skarmory again, you heal yourself, or you just set up a status like Thunder Wave, and you force out a lot of switches. While you're forcing out the switches, Stealth Rocks and Spikes burn them down, and it just devastates people. So if you guys enjoyed the video, a little bit of blast from the past, as well as how to use Chansey. And did I forget to mention counter? Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this is how to use Silvally. So this guide is going to look a little different from my other guides. Normally I go and show some typings for the Pokemon right here. However, this thing works like Arceus, that we're going to have memories instead of plates, and it's going to give us a monotyping of our choice. I'm not going to show all of those on screen. So pretty much, as long as you have your Pokemon basics down, just know everything about all the solo types, and we will be good to go. I'll say that the only thing you really need to research about the Silvally is going against it. That if you're going against the Silvally, it's good to know what kind of memory that Silvally might have, and that's why hopefully this thing on screen will help you out just a little bit, because you need to see all the different colors and all the different types of the Silvally. That way you can kind of distinguish on the fly the difference between Fairy, Psychic, and Ghost. Get a little complicated right there. Now when editing this video, I realized that this is actually a big problem with Silvally because it lights up like a freaking Christmas tree and it broadcasts what typing it is, because we're going to talk about some strategies and some playing around with Silvally later on in this video. But because of that, well, you'll know it's a fairy typing, so you can play around what potential set that's going to be. If it doesn't light up, well, then that means you know it's probably Life Orb set, and then you can also make adjustments based on that, know which type to not really worry about. So that's going to be a weakness that will probably come into play pretty big when using Silvally. And now let's go and talk about Silvally and how the whole type versus plate versus memory system works. I think it's actually pretty bad. That Ice Memories, for example, don't give any boost. Plates give a boost to Arceus, so that's where Arceus is going to gain a lot of power. That becomes that typing, and it's also going to get 20% extra damage on top of its stab, and then just have better stats than the Silvally. The memories, they don't do that, just change the typing. So that can be pretty bad. And then looking at Silvally's stats, on the surface, it's like really cool. It's like, oh my goodness, even stats. This thing has Arceus stats because it's like a makeshift Arceus. That's awesome. But then you realize 95 in speed and in the offensive. And the reason why Arceus is so good, there's gonna be a lot of Arceus comparisons in this video. Okay, now I have to deal with a 1 speed. That type null also has a 59 speed, and just switches it around when it evolves. That's like one of the sweetest things ever. But if this Pokemon had 105 on everything, I think it would still work. Like, I would have liked to see maybe Silvally just go to the next level, be above a pseudo legendary like 105 and everything. Could have been a little broken then, but I mean, people might have found ways to work with it or work around it. But just that 95 speed with the offenses turns out to just be a bad Pokemon, unfortunately. So let's go over to Cerebi and see what we can do with the Silvally. That at least it has some crazy coverage. I'm not gonna call it really good, but it's really fun. That we have like Iron Head, Poison Fang, Fire Fang, Ice Fang. So we get all the coverage fangs. We run into the X's, or we have Crunch, we have Air Slash. We can go into Razor Wind, Tri Attack, Parting Shot. We do all kinds of weird things. We have crazy special coverage as well. We have the Thunderbolt, we have the Ice Beam, we have the Flamethrower. We can go into other moves like the Flame Charge if we want to gain some speed. We have Shadow Claw, Swords Dance, Rock Slide. Oh my goodness, this made me want to saddest things I've ever seen. It gets Explosion. So Silvally is a man-made Pokemon. It was created from the parts of other Pokemon and then combined to be this ferocious god-slaying Pokemon. And it was also given a self-destruct button. That's a little unfortunate. It doesn't, yeah, it gets Draco Meteor Tutor, so I guess that's something you can maybe tech into a set if you really wanted to. Snarl can be usable in doubles, just, you know, you hit both opponents, you make their special attack drop. So, like, slight amounts of utility, not enough damage, not a lot of high base power moves except for maybe that Draco Meteor, so that's a bit of a problem right there. And that's why I'm just looking at with Silvally. It's like, what can we really do with it? There's not really extreme speed like the Arceus either. It's just kind of awkward when we break it down that, yeah, like, Arceus just sets up Swords Dance extreme speeds and then everything dies. But without any boosting, without, like, the right amount of coverage and the right transitioning, it's going to be kind of tricky to use. So let's go and hop into Pokemon Showdown and see what we can do with the Silvally. So let's just go Jolly Nature, you know, max out the speed, try to get the most out of that, go into the attack investment, and then see what we can do physically. Because physically, we can pull off some interesting things. I was just thinking Iron Head, Crunch, Explosion, and then whatever our multi-attack is going to be. I think the Fairy Memory is going to do really well, because Fairy Memory is going to give us crazy coverage. It means we're able to get those Dragon type Pokemon, those Fighting type Pokemon, those Dark type Pokemon, and then a lot of really solid neutral hits as well. Iron Head is going to coverage out against Rock type Pokemon, against Ice type Pokemon. Crunch is going to take care of Ghosts and Psychics. So we're finding nice coverage overall, and then also just really good neutrality coverage, just like Dark with Fairy, and then a little bit of Steel. Good go, and then worst case scenario, we just go and blow everything up for the biggest damage possible. That's like it. That's kind of it. You run memory, you run the coverage that kind of works with that, but then at the end of the day, it's a 95 base attack. Like, a sweeper Pokemon is generally looked over if it doesn't have over 100 speed and over 100 in an offensive stat, and Silvally doesn't even get either of those. Now we can even maybe go Adamant Nature. It's like, okay, everything's outspeeding us anyways, so I guess we can take that, and then maybe also transition to like a wall breaking one. Okay, let's just try to get bulky, let's try to get the most tankiness that we can, and then maybe something will come of it. But it's still like, okay, we've already seen Pokemon that have more bulk and can throw down more damage just in the 7th generation alone, so Silvally is going to struggle quite a bit. Other things, Life Orb. Life Orb is weird on this. That's all I can say. Like, everything is kind of weird when you break it down with the Silvally, because special attacking, well, what's the point of having a memory on special attack? Because the Arceus system is only going to work with multi-attack, and multi-attack is only going to be a physical attack. So no boosting right there, and the Life Orb, instead of giving 50% to one move, because effectively, say for example, we can go put an Ice Memory on Silvally, well, that means our Ice Beam now gets 50% boost because of Stab, or instead we can just run the Life Orb and then have various coverage, so Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Flash Cannon, Surf, do something simple like that, and then just run plus 30% on everything with a 95 special attack, 95 speed Pokemon. Again, we can do similar things. We can either just make it a bulky special attack breakdown kind of Pokemon that we put all the investment in hit points, or we can try to outspeed what we can and then put the rest into the speed as well. Just looking at the coverage of some other weird things you can do. I like the Hyper Beam. I honestly like the idea of a Hyper Beam on the special attacking set, because here's the deal. You're slow Pokemon. If they bring in a sweeper and you know you can survive one hit, I would rather go for the Hyper Beam. So that's gonna be stab boosted because you're normal type Pokemon without any memories or anything. Life Orb, Hyper Beam, that's going to be enough damage to KO things, and it doesn't matter if you have to recharge because you were going to pretty much die anyways. So that's like a good way of finishing off a Pokemon in a pinch if you don't have the coverage for it. That just kind of shows like Silvally, once we get into damage calculations, it's really going to show that you have to hit super effective, or else it just doesn't matter, and that's going to be kind of tricky. We have the Swords Dance, so technically Swords Dance is going to be like a really big thing against tanky Pokemon that they're going for setup. We're going Swords Dance, and then you're going to have like the really good coverage against them with the multi-attack, Iron Head, Crunch, and if I'm running Swords Dance, I get rid of the Explosion and run that instead. So that could be a way of dealing with tanky Pokemon. There's already a lot of really good tank busting Pokemon that people would prefer the Mimikyu in the 7th generation over the Silvally, because if I'm going for Swords Dance into damage, I mean, it's actually really sad when you look at the Mimikyu, because 90 attack and 96 speed, so it's slightly faster than Silvally for slightly less attack. Now it isn't as tanky, but with the disguise, you're still getting a free Swords Dance anyways. So this synthetically created Arceus God Pokemon doesn't do as much as other normal Pokemon. It's kind of awkward right there. And like I said, when we go back to the moveset and we look around at some of the things, it's cool, but it doesn't really do enough. Like in doubles, maybe you could do Snarls. That means you'd be more of a tanky supportive Pokemon. That we go into like the Thunder Wave, and then we set up a Snarl, and then we're just playing like the status as like a pseudo tanky Pokemon that might convert some damage if we need it. On the special set, like I said, Draco Meteor could work. The Dragon Memory, like the memories are kind of weird. If you run Dragon Memory, you're gonna have some decent weaknesses. But that shows that if you're running a memory as well, you're going to become that Pokemon, so you can use it for the resistances and weaknesses as well as the offenses. So I mean, like Dragon Memory, Draco Meteor is going to be absurd amounts of damage, but that's kind of all you're gonna get out of it. Everything else isn't even gonna be Life Orb boosted. And it's gonna be very low neutral hits and maybe even super effective hits that won't find KOs. Other things like the Flame Charge, I guess on the physical set, instead of running like the Explosion, you could run the Flame Charge. That Flame Charge is going to give you this extra stats. That's where it's like, okay, 95 base speed into +1. That's looking good. That's going to start finding you some really good outspeeds, and that's kind of what you can do. You can add them into the Flame Charge, use that to survive, and then try to outspeed. I think that's going to be the most that Silvally is capable of. And if you're a 3-hit KO Pokemon, you might be in for some luck. And you also might want to try to look for more specific coverage. Like the good thing about Silvally is that it will cure whatever you need in your team. That if you need more of a certain attack, or if you need a different, very level of coverage, Silvally can bring that for you. And if you're just bringing it in, like don't manually switch this thing in unless you know it's going to be like a massively resisted hit. But just kind of bring it in whenever you get the opportunity to set that Flame Charge. And after you're 3-hit KO Pokemon, okay, I'm outspeeding, I'm doing damage, I'm taking damage. I'm outspeeding, I'm KOing. I'm outspeeding, I'm KOing. You know, if you can find super effective hits or enough to actually get the damage, then maybe Silvally will be useful. But at the end of the day, the damage numbers don't really back it up. And that's why I have a lot of damage calculations to talk about. I've got like 5 things right here. I'm just going to go even deeper. So Silvally, Adamant Nature, multi-attack, not really going to do anything for us. That even against Pokemon like Weavile, which we've been using as like the standard for a Pokemon that needs to get broken, multi-attack is 2/3 of its health, a little more than that. And it doesn't really matter. Like, okay, what happens if we have? I'm trying to think about something neutral. So I guess we would go and want the ground memory. I mean, the memories aren't even in here because they don't change anything. Like, it's effectively just going to make me a ground typing instead of normal. So what we do to simulate the memory is we go ground and then we change this to ground. And yeah, multi-attack is going to be the same regardless. So it's not like that plate. The plate would give us more damage. The plate would boost us and actually augment our power. So that way we can specialize with that typing and then use that as our primary source of damage instead of just not having anything extra over a Life Orb or something like that. So that's going to be a problem. But this shows like the flame charge setup would work out. That you flame charge. You know, flame charge is going to be just guaranteed damage, especially against Weavile for that super effective hit. So flame charge is going to be big. Multi-attack finishes off. Now we only took 1 hit from Weavile for KO. If we are still like going to survive that next hit, then we can get a KO. So we get 2 for 1 with this, and even like 2.5 for 1, depending on the Pokemon that they bring in. That's gonna be kind of gambly. That you need to have the right set for the Pokemon that they respond with. If they have like a Scarf Pokemon with 100 base speed, which is fairly common because you're running Adamant, so like Timid on that 95 or higher with a Scarf, or Jolly on that Scarf will be pretty good. You can have an Adamant Garchomp just kind of come in with a Scarf and outspeed you. So decent range on the Scarfers, but against other ones, another problem would be like, oh, Salamence comes in and Dragon Dances unless you're running the Fairy multi-attack. The Fairy multi-attack probably puts in some good work. So let's see what that comparison would be. But it's just about that coverage. That if you're not running the right one at the right time, then that's where things get pretty bad. Like I'm just trying to discover things about. There's no way. Oh, the Intimidate. So yeah, Salamence can respond to you with that Intimidate. It gets the Dragon Dance for free, and then it goes and does big amounts of damage back if it wants to. Now, this is where things also get weird. As that Fairy, you are going to be very specialized against Salamence. I'm just bringing out examples. So at least we get rid of the primary stab of the Salamence, so maybe we won't be able to turn around and do as much back to us before already taking damage on that setup with the Flame Charge. So it can still go, and it still needs to have the right situations. But yeah, maybe a little bit of that being given credit for, but it's still, I think that Flame Charge set is kind of like the only way to get the most efficiency out of the Silvally. And if you get forced out by something, you know, they just bring in a really dense and tanky Pokemon, Toxapex. I think Toxapex would completely wall out the set right here, which would be unfortunate if you're running like multi-attack ground, and we don't have response to the Salamence now, and it just shows that most likely there's gonna be something on the opponent's team that will deal with your Silvally, and that's where the problems start coming in. Other things, just kind of like trying to get the other damage. This is the Life Orb set. set, we would need something like the double edge to find enough damage, or the return. So we're running a physical set and it has the life orb. I just showed the special set on the life orb, I believe. So I know the screen region's all kind of screwy. But like if you run a physical set with life orb, it's got the same idea as a special set. You're running it for coverage, which means your return starts doing reasonable amounts of damage. You are still taking damage on life orb, you're still getting outsped. You have to worry about just having the adamant nature, so you're going to be a little slower than other Pokemon as well. But the return, the Iron Head, you start finding low range KOs. Anything tankier than a Weavile, and you're not going to find a 1-hit KO, which is fairly unfortunate. Like, Lens we have 75, and then like 75. So return stops KOing. The Oricorio, I don't remember which one Oricorio was. Yeah, Oricorio is a low chance, 1 in 3 chance to KO. If you're going to be hitting it with that return double edge, would be just way too much damage. You're going to be losing a third of your health plus another 10% off that life orb. So I mean, double edge is a thing you could do for like big nukes, but even that's not going to KO something like a Garchomp. But then that's when you'd be running like hopefully a memory for. That's why I like the fairy memory. The fairy memory just suppresses dragons so well that it might give you an opportunity. That double edge still not going to be enough in the end. But if we're not running the fairy memory, then we don't have any kind of fairy type coverage. So badness right there. The special attacking set. So I'm thinking timid or modest or whatever. Timid's going to give you most speed. Moss will give it to you. But even then, like okay, 70, 75. Those are the super effective KO ranges. So that means we're either 2-hit KOing as a potentially slower Pokemon with these ranges right here on like 70, 75. Because that's going to be a sweeper. Like something has 75 base hit points and 70 base special defense. It's most likely a life orb something that's trying to do something else. And we can also go and bring up like a Greninja, for example. So Greninja, it gets a 2-hit KO all day long while outspeeding, and we don't really get to do much of that back. And on this set, yeah, you don't even have a coverage move for the Greninja except for Hyper Beam. So Hyper Beam would be enough to KO the Greninja. I can only hope, but that's kind of what we're looking at. See, Hyper Beam will find it, but you take a lot of damage and then the KO comes through. Greninja on just those neutral hits, it'll outspeed and it'll just dunk you. So that's why even like super effectives, it's still rather challenging for this. I was just starting to show a Garchomp defensive matchup. You know, Scarf Chomp just goes outspeeds you, hits you with 2 earthquakes, and you die. So even that 95 on the hit points antagonist, if we're not invested to it, it's not going to be that fantastic. Now the Ice Beam will work, but that's also special set versus physical set versus coverage set, whatever else you're doing. I just feel like if your opponent has a balanced team and they have like 2 varied tanks, if they have a tank for a certain amount of Pokemon, they have another tank that does a different job. Like I said, I feel like the Toxapex and another tank, and then Silvally doesn't even matter anymore. So that could be a big problem for the Silvally. And I think this actually might be like a more gambly kind of Pokemon than Swag play. Like the Thunderwave, Swagger, Prankster, if they hit themselves in confusion, they die. If they hit you, you die. I think Silvally's even more gambly than that. So it can have insane highs if it has the right moves at the right time, but it also has insane lows as well. It just doesn't have the speed to compensate for it properly is my problem. And then Silvally into Salazzle. Yeah, Salazzle 2 shots us on like Sludge Bomb or Flamethrower, and then our damage in return is not going to be enough. Even with like an adamant multi-attack move, unless it's super effective, we're not going to find it. If we're actually running it into, what would it be, like Life Orb? I think Life Orb on return would kind of be it. So Life Orb return would actually find it, but then we'd have to be running adamant. Say if we're running the Jolly Nature, it's still good. Okay, so that just kind of shows again, it's like, are we going to be running for coverage, or are we just kind of running for that return nuke level of damage? And then the Salazzle still has big damage back to us. So if it's already taking damage, if your Silvally is already taking damage, Salazzle, any kind of sweeper Pokemon's going to be really fast in. So it's really, yeah, as I keep saying, it's right place at the right time, times a million for Silvally. So there we go, guys. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.
Take your vibes and go, 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 go. Take your vibes and go, 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 go.
The all-new Acura.
Welcome back. Wolfpack Girls here, we're taking a trip from Kalos to Hoenn, and we're bringing Hawlucha with us. Hawlucha is a ridiculous Pokemon. Like, just straight up, it's a crazy Pokemon, and then it'll maybe be an Alpha Sapphire. It just gets even better with move tutors. Drain Punch. Now, admittedly, Hawlucha isn't a super tanky Pokemon, so it's surviving and getting Drain Punch isn't, like, the most reliable thing, but I mean, still gets access to Drain Punch. It has recovery, it has sustain, so if you're trying to set up, that just makes it stronger right there. Hawlucha is also a fighting type Pokemon, which means Iron Head is going to be strong against fairies because it's weak against fairies. Same with Thunder Punch. Hawlucha is a fighting type Pokemon, which means flying is strong against it. But with Thunder Fire Punch is just a good quality of life thing to carry. So overall, Hawlucha, I already felt was pretty strong in X and Y. Now it's even better in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and there's even a couple other move tutors. On the supportive side, it's access to Tailwind for doubles, Helping Hand for doubles, and Sky Attack. Now it already had Sky Attack, but this is, Battle Points to spin instead. You can just get Sky Attack really quickly on an existing Hawlucha. Now how are we going to use it in battle? We see a lot of crazy potential here, but it's going to be based off of its ability. Depending on how you want to run it, you can get a lot of just ridiculous strength out of it. Some people will turn to Power Herb. 2-turn moves complete in 1 turn, and then you just throw out a Sky Attack. Sky Attack has 140 base power, and instead of charging in 2 turns, it's going to be in that first turn. So you have a 140 base power move going off in the first turn with a high chance to crit, high chance to flinch, and it's just ridiculous damage that's gaining stab. But it gets better than that, because if we look at its ability on Burden, speed is doubled when held item is lost. That includes Power Herb being consumed. So now we're going to double our speed after throwing out a potentially high chance to KO move, and now we just become untouchable. That you don't have to invest anything in the speed. 272 on the speed is going to be pretty good, and then that goes to over 500 at level 100. And if we just tone down the stats to level 50, since some people like seeing it at level 50, we're still going to get ridiculously fast, and that means we can put the rest of the hit points in Adamant. Going Adamant Nature is going to give us the most damage possible, and investing into our hit points is also going to give us that survivability. So you can endure pretty much any non-super effective hit with this. Throughout the Sky Attack, now you're faster than everyone, and you just go for high jump kick. You can also carry acrobatics. If you have no held item, which is going to be consumed by Power Herb, now this has high base power, and you just kind of switch between high jump kick and acrobatics, and then you carry your 1 quality of life move. And for the last move, I was just thinking Fire Punch. Fire Punch is going to be very reliable, just help with those pesky Pokemon that need to get hit by a 4-time super fire move, because acrobatics has you covered. That acrobatics is doubling to 110, which means that a super effective Thunder Punch or super effective Iron Head really just does less damage than the acrobatics, so you can kind of put whatever you want here. Also, Hawlucha can set up with Swords Dance really well. I was thinking Focus Sash, that way you're pretty much guaranteed to get your Swords Dance off, and then you can just do whatever you want. That's why I like Drain Punch. That since high jump kick, it can get protect blocked, it can be ghost switched, and then you lose half your health. Just already bad if you're at 1 hit point, and all sorts of things. Drain Punch is going to get stabbed. After you use the Swords Dance, you're still going to have a really good amount of damage coming from it, so it is really nice to carry, and then that's when you can have Iron Head and maybe acrobatics. So acrobatics is going to be kind of a risk in this situation. If Focus Sash doesn't get procced, acrobatics is going to be doing a lot of damage, which is why you want to have Iron Head. You want to have that coverage move kind of protecting you, and then Drain Punch since you're already Swords Dancing. Now if you just want to go for that super, I'm going to knock out everything, that's when you can go for high jump kick if you feel it as well. Now this also brings up another thing on the ability. So pretty much if you're running on Burden, you can go with the hit points attack, but if you want to run Limber, you can invest Jolly Nature. That way you get a ridiculous amount of outspeed because you have a 118 base speed. You're not gonna have as much damage, but that's what the Swords Dance is for. And then you can run Limber. Limber makes it where you cannot get paralyzed. So if they try to Thunder Wave you, if they try to do something like that to really reduce your speed, it kind of doesn't bother you. You're not going to have that chance of getting paralyzed, at 25% chance to not move or anything. So this is kind of, it's a different form of reliability that you're not worrying about, okay, Focus Sash doesn't go off, I'm still really fast, I'm still doing damage. Limber makes it to where I'm safe, but at the same time, you can be tankier by running the Unburden and getting more speed in the end. So it just depends on which Hawlucha you want to run, the safer one, the higher gambit one, Focus Sash with Swords Dance, or just Power Up, high jump kick, and the raw damage moves. Now Hawlucha takes a crazy turn in doubles because it becomes the ultimate support. Like I was considering this as a crazy support Pokemon, and my friend Cody that I've talked about many times, he's a really good VGC player. We just got looked at Hawlucha and we're like, dude, this thing's great because I mean,